Let's talk about how you can scaffold directions using only English. First, how often do you give instructions only in English using no Japanese? Write an X on your paper. Next, how often do your students misunderstand when you give directions in English? Mark an X on your paper. If your X's are closer to never than always, this video will help you to think of ways to change that. Because more English leads to greater understanding. The objective of this video is to help you to give more directions using English. Direction giving is a large part of a language lesson, and if you can do it in English, your students will learn much more. Look at this teacher. She's giving the students directions in a way that they can understand in English. What she is saying is called comprehensible input. Comprehensible input is language that students understand and remember, and it leads to language acquisition. So, how can you give instructions that students will understand? By using I do, we do, you do, the gradual release of responsibility, and VARK, learning styles. Let's learn about those. First, I do, we do, you do is called the gradual release of responsibility. You are slowly giving responsibility to the students through this model. Let's look at these another way. So when you teach something or you give instructions or directions for something, I do means the teacher models or shows the right way. We do means we do it together, the teacher and student. You do means you do it on your own. The students do it on their own, by themselves or in a group or pair. Let's look at I do. In this stage, the teacher shows the students what to do by giving information, examples, and modeling. Modeling is giving an example of how to do something the right way. Take a moment to pause the video and read the examples on the right. For example, when we did the name card activity in class, my I do was when I modeled the language and actions by myself, so you could see the right way to do it. Another I do was when I demonstrated with a student volunteer. We do is when the teacher does the activity with the students. The teacher doesn't give the students complete responsibility yet. Pause the video and read these examples on the right. For example, when we did the name cards, I didn't let you do it first by yourselves. I stopped you step by step to explain and make sure you did it right. Finally, you do is when you give complete responsibility to the students. The teacher is there to watch and help if it's needed. Please pause and read the examples to the right. The you do for the name card activity was when you mixed with your classmates. I watched, listened, and thought about how I could best help you. But you did the activity. We've looked at I do, we do, you do. Now let's look at learning styles, also known as VARK. Learning styles are the ways that we learn best. It's all about the way that we give students input or deliver instruction to them. For example, how you fill in this blank in this sentence is what your dominant or most important learning style is. I personally learn best when I get information in a visual way, so my learning style is mostly visual. We always have one or two different ways that are best, but for me, the dominant one is visual. There are 4 different learning styles: visual, auditory, reading, and writing. Auditory means listening. Kinesthetic means moving. We call these styles VARK. V-A-R-K. You should use different learning styles when you teach everything in your class, but in this video, we'll look at how to use them with directions. They're especially useful with the I do stage. Remember, I do is when the teacher shows the students what to do by giving information, examples, or a model. When we did the name card activity, I gave you visual instructions in the form of pictures on the PowerPoint. If you got confused, you could look at the pictures and understand quickly. You could also just draw quick pictures on the board if you don't want to make a PowerPoint. Also, I gave you auditory instructions. To really help the auditory learners, ask them to repeat the instructions back to you after you've given them. For read-write, I showed you words for the instructions on the PowerPoint. You can do this quickly with 1 or 2 words on the board, or you can use a PowerPoint like I did. Finally, for the kinesthetic learners, get them involved by having them act out the directions or by asking them to demonstrate first. Kinesthetic learners learn best when they're moving. Let's review. We learned about the gradual release of responsibility. I do it, you watch me. We do it together. You do it and I help you. In the I do phase, you can use VARK. For the visual learners, show pictures. For the auditory learners, explain it and repeat in English. For the read and write learners, give directions on the board, even if it's just 1 or 2 words. For the kinesthetic learners, have them do gestures to show they understand or demonstrate. So remember, you are the most important source of comprehensible English input for your students, by far. You are the way that they're going to hear the most English. And, in fact, in the United States, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages has suggested to foreign language teachers like Spanish teachers and Russian teachers, German teachers, that language educators and their students should use the target language as much as possible, 90% plus, at all levels of instruction. So all across America, most good language teachers are using 90% or more in their language classrooms of the target language. This is just the United States. It's a different culture, a different country, but I thought you'd find that interesting. So how could you do this? How could you start to try to use 90% plus in your classroom? By using the gradual release of responsibility and VARK. So you'll get a chance to practice these when we do our game fair in week 8. For now, finish your note-taking paper and we'll discuss this in class.